All right, so today is Kids Cook. So here's what I want, all right? I want kids only in the kitchen. Now, I mean, if you're like really young, then yeah, your parents can help you. But this is Kids Cook Pizza. And it's not just like call up the pizza and have Donato's deliver. It's not just grab a frozen pizza crust. We're gonna make our own pizza dough. And when you do that, you realize that the options are endless. Okay, but here's what we gotta do. We gotta get some things ready. Now these are things that you probably already have on hand. You just have to go find them in the pantry. They might be in the fridge. Here's what we're gonna need, so listen carefully. Flour, all-purpose flour. See if you can get a bag of flour. Next, we're gonna need some yeast. It's best to get what's called active dry yeast, but even instant yeast would work. So flour, yeast, next thing is honey. You could also use maple syrup or sugar for this, but honey's the best. Then water. I need a cup of water. You also need a little whisk or a spoon, some measuring cups, and some measuring spoons. You think you got all that? All right, let's go get it. Okay, I hope you're ready to get started because we're gonna knock out some pizza dough. So, put all your stuff on the counter and then you're gonna start by getting your measuring cups and your measuring spoons. I want you to find what's called a 4th cup measurement. So, I've got some measuring cups here. Cup, half cup, 1/3 of a cup, well, you don't use that very much, and 1/4 cup. This is what we want to start with. So, I'm gonna grab my all-purpose flour, and I'm gonna grab a 1/4 cup of this flour. Now, here's a fun tip to do. If you've got a butter knife at home, grab your bag of flour and stir it up a little bit with the knife. You don't want the flour super packed down. So, I've got my 4th cup of flour. Now what I did after I filled it is I leveled it off with the knife. So it's exactly a 4th cup. And throw it into a bowl. Here we go, medium bowl, flour in, check. All right, you are almost there. Next component, grab your yeast. Now, if you're using those packets of yeast, you can use 2 of those in this recipe. We are going to use active dry yeast. Now, I need you to find some measuring spoons. I've got mine right over here. Ta-da! You got a couple different options here. We've got the teaspoon size, we've got a 1/2 teaspoon. You're going to be looking for the big one, the tablespoon measurement. I want you to take this tablespoon measurement. I want you to open the yeast. If you look inside there, it looks like a bunch of little brown particles. Believe it or not, these little things are alive and raring to go. They're asleep right now, so we have to be a little quiet. I think they're snoring. We're gonna take the tablespoon and we're gonna scoop out about a tablespoon worth and boop, right in our bowl. I want you to grab about a 1/2 tablespoon more. Throw it right in there. Now, in our bowl so far, we've got our flour, we've got our yeast. Check out the cool whisk, and you get to do the stirring. Doesn't have to be a professional job, you're just mixing it around. Now, the fun begins. I've got my warm water. The warm water goes into the bowl. Boom! Then, grab my honey. I don't even want you to measure this bad boy. I want you to grab that honey, and I want you to squeeze it for about 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I want you to stop, and you have added enough honey. Now, believe it or not, that honey is what's going to wake those yeast up. They're going to be like, what's that? Something sweet? And then they're going to go to work for you. So, remember this whisk? Remember the bowl? Now it's time to really do the magic. If you look now, I've got just a bunch of floating things in there. Once you whisk this up, like so, you get a beautiful, delicious brown water. Actually, there's nothing beautiful or delicious about this, but it's the important start. What you've just done is you have just basically turned on an alarm bell for these yeast, and they are going to go to work for you. Now, here's what's important. Grab a timing device, like the one I've got here. Once you have your timing device, set it for 10 minutes, start, and you wait. And when this timer goes off, you are ready for the next step. In the meantime, cover this maybe with some plastic wrap or even a plate or something, and leave it alone. We'll check back in when this timer goes off. So I'm down to about 7 seconds left on the timer, and we are coming down to crunch time, and oh, wait for it, it's go time. So here's what we gotta do. We gotta grab a couple things to get ready for this next step. And your items are, number 1, half cup of water, warm, go. Number 2, we are also going to need some salt, kosher salt if you can find it. And number 3, I'm gonna need you to find some olive oil. If you can't find olive oil, use canola oil or sunflower oil, just not motor oil, all right? So find some of that, grab yourself a fork, and meet back. Here we go. And we're back. So I've got my almost ready, what's called proofed yeast here. It is actually covered in a shower cap. No lie, but you know what? It's a good use for them because you can reuse it. So I'm going to take the shower cap off, and I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1 is the smell test. I'm going to pick it up and, ooh, smells yeasty. Number 2 is the look test. I'm going to look inside. It should look foamy and bubbly and just like a big glob of yummy foam type things. So that's how I know that my yeast is ready and I am good to go. So off to the races, apron on. Now if you don't have an apron, it's okay, but I tend to get a little messy when I do this part, and you might too. So I'm gonna grab the cup measurement. Remember the flour? I'm gonna go for 4 cups of flour. So shake this around a little bit, and we go with, number 1 in the bowl. And number 2 in the bowl. Can you guess where number 3 is gonna go? Not on the floor, no. In the bowl. And finally, the grand finish, number 4 in our bowl. Now, one of my cups was a little light, so I'm gonna add just a fraction more. Now, pinch of salt. Here's how you get a pinch of salt. You take 2 fingers and you pinch them. That's how you get a pinch of salt. So grab your salt, grab your 2 fingers, and pinch. Sprinkle, and you are good to go. Voila, as they say. Now, I've got my flour, I've got my salt. I am ready for the final liquid addition. Half cup of warm water. Now, if you're doing your math, you figured out that the total amount of liquid here is 1.5 cups. Down the hatch. Now I have a foamy mess with flour and water and salt, and not much else going on. But that's why I've got my fork and I've got my mussels, and I'm gonna go to work. So take your fork, take those mussels, and go for it. And what you're doing is you're just mixing this up. Mixing it up, and at first nothing is gonna happen. But just keep going in a circle, and then all of a sudden it's gonna get really hard. Start scraping the sides of the bowl, mix, and all of a sudden it's gonna feel like you are getting a workout. And you're gonna be like, good grief, when will this be over? And the answer is, quite a while actually, because this is some hard work. Now, here's a little secret. If you have a stand mixer with a dough hook, that will do all the work for you. But here's the other part of that. That's no fun. It's more fun to do it yourself and to get your hands full of flour. So, I've got a little secret over here, which is a bowl of flour that I keep for just such a purpose. So I'm gonna take this bowl of flour, I'm gonna put it here. If you look at my counter, I've got some room to work with, so I'm gonna spread out my tools. I am gonna take this bowl of just kind of gooey randomness, and believe it or not, I'm just gonna dump that sucker onto my counter. Now you're thinking, this looks nothing like pizza dough, and you know what? You're right, because right now, it looks like just a bunch of flour that's sort of globbed up and kind of gross looking. But, with these things, and a little help from this, we are gonna turn this mess into a ball of dough. Observe how this happens. I'll put a little flour on my hands. Then I'm gonna start working the dough working it toward the center, and eventually it's going to begin sticking together. Now let's say that you're working this dough and you're like, my goodness, this is never going to stick together. You might be what we call dry. Now, here's a question. If you're dry, what do you need to add to no longer be dry? Ding, 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 water. So add a little bit of water and you're good to go. This one is just about perfect and it's starting to come together. So what I'm going to do is call knead the dough. That's K-N-E-A-D, knead. And we need to knead our dough. There you go. So I've got my dough, it's starting to come together. Little flour on my hands, bloop, 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 little flour in the air, because it never hurts. Then, actually, it kind of does. But take this and we are just going to begin kneading by using the palm of our hand. We're going to push down and then out with that palm of our hand. Down and out. Some people think kneading is just punching. And honestly, that's kind of fun. But if you punch it, your dough says, ow, I don't like that. And it sort of seizes up. But if you massage it, it says, ah, and relaxes. So we are going to knead the dough. And we go 1, 2, 3, get a little workout going. Yeah. So push down and knead, push down and knead, push down and knead. And pretty soon you are going to get a rhythm. And you're going to be building some crazy muscles. So next time you go to climb that rope in gym class, I don't even know if you're allowed to climb ropes anymore in gym class, but next time you're going to fly up that sucker. Or the monkey bars, watch out. Because when you start kneading dough, you start getting real strong up there. Now, my dough is getting a little sticky. So the answer to that, more flour. Some on my hands, some in the air. And boom, 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 boom. You work the dough. Okay, how long do you do this? Well, you kind of do it until it feels just right. Now you're thinking, how do I know when it feels just right? Because this is the first time I've done it. All right, I'll give you time, maybe 3 minutes if you do it really well. If you're just kind of doing it like this, maybe 5 minutes. But if you're working this dough, then in a couple minutes, what's going to happen is the dough is going to be a much different texture altogether. It's going to get its stickiness, and it's also going to have a really nice consistency to it. When that happens, you are done with the kneading process. Also, when that happens, you are ready to let that dough rest. That's what's important about this. I said that the yeast had woken up, but the yeast takes a while to do its work. Now, time for a science lesson. What happens is that yeast is going to consume sugar. And when that yeast consumes sugar, it does two things. One is it releases this sort of carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is actually what's going to cause this bread to rise. The other thing is it contributes to an ethanol alcohol creation. That's how you get fermented beverages. But we are interested in the carbon dioxide. That's what's going to make this ball of dough eventually become twice its size. So I'm going to knead just a little bit more. And the dough is starting to get what's called springy, which means when you apply pressure to it, it springs back, it pops back. That's how I know that I'm done with the kneading process. Just to make sure, I always go about 30 seconds more just to really work that dough together. By now, your arms should be really tired. You can always have a friend help, you can have a parent help, or you can just grin and bear it and do it yourself. When I'm done, I slam it on the counter and I hit it once, sometimes twice. Then I take my dough, sometimes it's fun to throw it in the air like this, just make sure you catch it because if not, it could hit the counter. So take my dough, form it into a little bit of a ball, put it on the counter, and then, you remember that bowl we originally were mixing in? This is going to be our rising bowl. It's where the dough is going to go from this size to twice its size. But to ensure that it doesn't stick to the bowl, olive oil. Open this up and pour in about 2 tablespoons. Here's how much 2 tablespoons is. Doodaloo, doodaloo. I'm going to take this bowl and I'm going to take this ball of dough and I'm going to dip ball of dough into the bowl. Then I'm going to mix it all around so I spread the olive oil all over the edges. While you do this, you can sing the spread the olive oil song. It goes like this. Spread the olive, spread the olive, spread the olive oil. Actually, don't sing that because nobody likes that song. So once you have it spread, flip it over and put your mother's shower cap back on. Actually, really don't use it if it's actually been used as a shower cap. That's just something you can do with shower caps. This needs to sit in a fairly warm place for 1 hour. But you know what? You're good because you've got your timer. So you open up your timer, you set your timer for, you guessed it, 60 minutes, 1 hour, and you are off to the races. In 1 hour, we'll check back in and see what's going on with our dough. All right, peace out. Hey, welcome back. Now this is, I have to say, one of my favorite parts. This dough has been rising for 60 minutes. Remember, we set our timer and we waited and we were patient. Remember being patient? Because if you do it before the 60 minutes, the dough might not be ready. Here's how I know my dough is ready. Shower cap off, and dough has risen to a little bit more than twice its size. It looks nice and springy and delicious, and I am going to say thank you to it with my fist. I'm going to take my fist and I'm going to punch this dough. I'm going to get out my aggression. So think about whoever you're mad at today, and you're going to take that fist and you're going to punch this dough just like this. Honestly, it does feel pretty good. And your hand gets coated in olive oil, which feels really good. Let's give it another punch. Even got the dog excited about punching the dough. So now I have the dough all punched down. So again, I used my hand, I punched it down. It's about the size it originally was. Now it requires patience again. 60 more minutes. Oh my gosh, you gotta be crazy. But here's the nice thing. During this second round, I have plenty to do. Step one, I'm gonna cover my dough back up with my shower cap. Really do come in handy. I'm gonna set this to the side. Then I need to get all my stuff ready. Here's what you need to find in your pantry or your cupboard or your drawers. I want you to see if you can find one of these. This is called a pizza stone, and chances are your parents have one. If they don't have one, just get a sheet tray. But if you have one of these, you are set. So find this. Then, if you want to be really cool, get one of these. If you don't have one of these, then you just say, Mommy, Daddy, could I please get a pizza peel for my birthday? I promise I will use it to make delicious food. This is a pizza peel, and it's like you see at the really cool restaurants with the long handles. This one's a short handle, but you use this to put the pizzas in and get them out of the oven. Don't worry, if you don't have this, you can just use a sheet pan, and I'll show you how to do that. Once you get these ready, start thinking about what you want on your pizza. This is prep time. So I like to keep the pizzas pretty simple, especially when I'm cooking for kids. So one of the things that I always like to have is a good cheese on hand. Now you can use a bag of shredded mozzarella, no problem. But I do like to get the balls of mozzarella because then you can cut them yourself and tear them yourself. So get your cheese ready. I also like using provolone cheese. This goes really well with sort of a cheesy flatbread. You want to grab a pizza sauce of some sort. You can make it yourself, but a jarred one works just fine. And if you're interested in meat on your pizza, always grab some pepperoni or some sausage, something like that. You might want onions and peppers. Honestly, it's whatever you want on your pizza. But here's my caution to you. Don't overdo it with the toppings. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when our 60 minutes is up and our pizza is ready to go. See you then. All right, now the fun part begins. My dough is ready to go. It has risen again, even after the violent punching and beating that it took. It is now exactly where it needs to be to make the perfect pizza dough. Now the dough that I have in here is enough to make 4 medium to large pizzas. So what I'm gonna do is divide it into 4 pieces, and then I'm gonna start rolling out my dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of move it around a little bit and plop it right on the counter. Now, easiest way to do this is just use your hand. divide the dough in half, then take one of those halves and divide it in half again. Now, while you're getting this going, you're going to want to take that pizza stone and put it in your oven at 500 degrees. That seems super hot, but you want it hot to make a really good pizza. You could go 450 if you wanted. Heck, you could go all the way up to 550 if you want, but 500 is a really good temperature for this. I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to just flatten it out on the counter. Don't worry about the perfect circle at this point. This is where that little flour comes in handy. So I'm going to take the flour and get it on my hands, get it on the pizza, turn the pizza over, get it on this side until everything is nicely floured. Then I'm going to use a rolling pin. These are helpful not just to hit a sibling with, but also to roll out your dough. So I'll put some flour on there. You'll notice flour is getting everywhere. That's okay. So take this, roll your dough, roll your dough. Now, one thing to notice as I'm rolling the dough is I'm not rolling over the edges. And that's because I'm going to want a crust on my dough. As you're rolling, if you want to fix anything to make it more of a circle, or if you want to make a cool shape like a square or an octagon or a hexagon, this is your time to do that. It's your time to shine. This is unfortunately not a dough that you want to throw up in the air. I will show you another pizza dough down the road that you can do that with. This one is more just about rolling it out until you get a nice thin crust. Now, I'm going to take my flour and I'm going to throw some onto my pizza peel here. Then I'm going to pick my pizza up, move it over here. We can scoot this back once you have it on there. The first pizza that I'm going to make is my cheesy flatbread pizza. So, I've got my olive oil here, olive oil being kind of a white sauce base. I'm going to pour the olive oil right there. You don't want to go too crazy on the olive oil. And then I'm going to get my provolone cheese ready. Provolone really melts well for a pizza cheese. Take your hand, smooth that olive oil around. Once you get that smoothed around, keep an edge so that you have a crust. Then you're going to take your provolone and you're just going to lay the provolone out, covering really as much of the pizza as you want to. For a pizza this size, you're going to end up using about 5 pieces of provolone. You can tear the last one if you want to cover everything. What I like to do, just to add a little bit of color to what looks like a pretty white pizza, is just a sprinkle of oregano. Just sprinkle it on top like this. Gives a little bit of an additional color to your pizza. And that is it to make a really good cheesy flatbread. Now, before you do anything else, make sure the pizza slides. I want you to pick it up and carefully just give it a shake. There. See how it slides on that peel? This way it can slide right into the hot oven with that hot pizza stone. Double check. Is your oven on? Is it at the right temperature? Is your pizza stone ready? If so, we're going to head over to the oven. Once you're at the oven, you're going to carefully open the oven and you're going to slide this onto the pizza stone. Now don't worry, as long as you don't touch anything in the oven, you're going to be fine. So here we go. We're going to open, we're going to shake, slide it onto that pizza stone, close it back up quick because you don't want to lose all the heat, and set your timer for about 8 minutes or so. You know what? Let's go, instead of 8, with about 6, just to be safe. While we're waiting for that pizza, don't just stand around. Let's make another pizza. We're going to go back to our station. So I'm going to go ahead and get my peel ready with some flour. Notice we're using a lot of flour through this process, so you want to make sure you have enough flour on hand. I originally divided my dough into 4. So I'm going to grab one of those fourths, pat it down like we did before. Looks like I've got some oregano on my hands, but that's okay. And we flour it up. We flour it up. And we're going to go ahead and do the same process we did before, but this time we've got a timer going. So we want to wrap this up by the time that other pizza is done. So I'm going to do this. get that pizza going. If any part feels a little thicker, then you can kind of spread it around a little bit. And this is just going to be our basic cheese pizza. I've got some pizza sauce here. I'm going to open that up. Grab a spoon, and you want to start in the center and then work your way around with that sauce. Careful not to go past the edge. You want to keep all the sauce toward the center of the pizza while keeping a crust. Now you can add as much or as little sauce as you want, but I recommend to not overdo it with your toppings. Because if you overdo it and you try to put too much on your pizza, it just won't end up cooking the right way. So, for all those of you out there who like just a cheese pizza, this is the way you do it. You've got your red sauce, you've got your dough, and last but definitely not least, I've got some cheese. This is just some mozzarella cheese from that cheese ball I had. And what I'm going to do is actually just tear it into pieces and put those pieces on the pizza like this. Tear it into pieces. They don't all have to be the same size, but you don't want massive pieces on your pizza. Just tear it into pieces and spread them fairly evenly so that you get a nice, good coating of cheese. I'm going to move those around a little bit. And then this pizza's ready to go in the oven. So it's going to sit here and wait while my other pizza finishes. But before I do anything else, I'm going to do that shake test. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to, there it goes. You want to make sure that pizza moves on here. If it sticks to your peel, you're not going to get in the oven. Now, all I have to do is wait and wait. But pretty soon, I'm going to have some delicious pizza. If you don't have a pizza peel, any sheet tray would work. I have this old warped sheet tray. It's all got stains on everything. This is perfect for getting a pizza in the oven and out of the oven. So this is what I'm going to be using to take the pizzas out of the oven, since I'll be using the peel to put them in the oven. And so really, when it gets down to it, the best part of this whole process, more than making the dough, more than getting all the things ready, more than punching down the dough, is taking that first bite of pizza. And the cool thing about it is this is a pizza that you made yourself. And when you make your food yourself, the fact is, it just tastes better.